Look, Sheriff, you haul me in just to bug me with this kid. Well, you're wasting your time. I'm not gonna listen.
Andy Griffith liked November a lot. 22 Andy 1963, Andy Griffith ruined the hole. He threw chairs at the Mayberry courtroom set. Broke props and punched walls. The cast stood still as America's favorite. The sheriff lost control on this one. Kennedy's death. This is what Andy showed his real face. The mentor who taught us a small town's ideals had won with his co-stars that he made grown men cry on set. He killed his own adopted son with a "This is the real" letter asking for forgiveness. Sheriff Andy Griffith was not at all like Sheriff. It was known to Taylor and everyone in Hollywood. Andy Griffith was born on June 1, 1926. In Mount Airy, North Carolina, with his mom and dad wasn't having enough money to even buy a crib for his first few months of life. In real life, Andy slept in dresser drawers. His parents used old pieces of cloth to line them. Trying to soften their one room, the house didn't have much running water. The cold got in through cracks in the walls. It was a rough start that his mother Geneva blamed for the deep scars. She would cry while telling herself neighbors how ashamed she and Andy felt. That shame turned into something else big. He was afraid of being poor even as a child. Would come back by age 5, already making sure the doors were locked and food was kept. He had to be in charge. They needed to feel safe, and their fear turned into intense love for his father. Carl Lee Griffith was a helper for a builder when he could work and make about $8 a week. He worked only 3 or 4 days a week most of the time. He would come home with wood chips in his eyes. She would dig them out of his hands. Andy watched by candlelight at night. His dad used a lamplight to count coins. Hopefully, it would be enough for food, and putting coal on the fire wasn't always there. The house was on the wrong side of the there are train tracks in the neighborhood. Having a good name made Andy walk 2 extra miles to school so no one would see where he lived. That shame never happened to him. Later in life, she left him. Obsessed with making money and discussing every Hollywood sign, the deal down to the penny. People called him a miser, but he wasn't. Afraid of going back to where he came from, Geneva began to try to keep him looking sharp. She cleaned and pressed his few clothes, even his shoelaces, to keep up looks, but that failed. Richer kids made fun of him because they knew he was poor. Being fake was made fun of by them. It got so bad that it was better than he was. Andy got a stutter that didn't go away. Until he was 14 years old, he began making jokes that make people laugh were his defense. Thought that if he could make them laugh, he knew they wouldn't pick on him, but he did. Was making walls. He started to think that his worth depended on how well he did on that, being useful, fun, and safe. That he believed in things for the rest of his life. One of his first painful outbursts at a school play he was in was 8. He forgot his lines in a play. Christmas show, and he ran off stage. He locked himself in the coal pit for 6 hours. Hours later, when he came out, something had. His teacher said his eyes looked different. Different cold, and his mother saw it too. Andy would have bad feelings after that. Getting angry sometimes if he felt because he felt bad or rejected. He once threw a hit a boy who laughed at his underwear. The boy had to have 12 stitches. As a child, weather never really went away. After many years, on Hollywood sets, went back if he felt threatened or if you treat him badly, he could snap and yell. People on the shooting crew are making grown men cry. People in the business called him the Mount Airy Beast, but that mad kid also had a dream of growing into something bigger. Andy always dreamed of being an opera singer. After that, he thought about he became a Moravian preacher and joined the College of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1944 to study religion, but music pushed him more. He changed to a degree in music and finished in 1949. He was the first person in his family to finish college at UNC. He was the lead in operettas and he played in a college music fraternity. It has ships like the Mikado and the HMS Pina. These lessons would shape his TV show character. After many years, the quiet people started to trust Sheriff Andy Taylor. From real music practice and from the moral base of his church life gave him. Andy taught music after college at a Goldsboro high school for 3 years. He had 2 lives. During the day, he taught theater and singing at night. Came up with comedy acts with his wife Barbara. They put on shows at social clubs. His jokes took him slowly around North Carolina, and the stories got better. One routine in particular began to feel laughs every time. It's about a countryman who didn't get it. He also played football in the summers. Putting on in The Lost Colony, a classic play outside in Monteo, he began with small parts but eventually took on the part of Sir Walter Raleigh. Brought him steady work and growth, trust, and his first taste of real cheers. He loved the Outer Banks so much that he bought land. In the end they wanted to be buried there. When then, in 1953, the time came, broke the routine he and Barbara had been following had made it clear that it was football. Came out in a small Chapel Hill studio. Andy froze up in front of it. Took 5 tries to get the mic right. Yes, but when they finally caught it, it spread like wildfire to the clean form. In just 1 week, 50,000 copies of the song were sold. A few weeks later, Capitol Records picked it up, and in the end sold nearly 800,000 copies. It got to number 9 on the Billboard charts. Changed in that 1 second everything. In early 1954, Andy showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show, and all of a sudden a man who used to sleep in a dresser drawer, Andy Griffith, was known all over the country as an American hero. He looked great. A guy from a small town with a friendly face and people thought he had a kind heart, but behind the scenes, there was a lot more. Making his rise to fame in the 1950s hard to handle came with a price, and the more successful he was, the darker his private life became. Life turned into it. All began in 1955. Griffith was nominated for a Tony Award for his part in No Time for Sergeants. The play began at the Alvin Theatre and ran for $7.96. From the outside, it looked like shows win, but Griffith was already feeling it inside. Members of the cast of Falling Apart later said he drank a lot and had bad mood swings, and ran the set with fear. George Lindesay, who worked with him on most of what the Andy Griffith Show, said cast was scared of him, and he would only call stars he liked after at every show. If the phone didn't ring, they were afraid of the next day. This wasn't a one-time thing. It began early on and didn't stop for 2 years. In 1957, Griffith's first movie was In Face in the Crowd. He played a pleasant man who becomes a monster when he gets popular. The part was eerily close. The truth, reviewers loved it, but what they didn't know was how close this was. What the real Andy Griffith was like. Griffith had chairs to get the job brought on set just to smash. He needed to get in touch with his real anger. That this anger didn't just come from, it lived inside him and didn't live anywhere else. Griffins didn't stay in the movies. Fame grew quickly after shows on the Ed Sullivan Show and the Steve Allen Show. In 1956, he even shared the stage with Elvis Presley, who sang Hound Dog Dog to a real basset hound in that show, watched by 40 million people. Griffith was becoming well known, but with that, when people were successful, they became cocky. Who were with him saw how he changed. Rude, asked for special care and didn't like other people. His charm on camera hidden an ego that was already big. Hard for him to hide. His marriage to it all began for Barbara Bray Edwards in 1949 with love. They met in college and moved to New York with each other. But Hollywood changed. Barbara stood by his side for 23 years, through good times and bad. Both of them adopted 2 kids, but even though she helped him, he kept drinking or cheating. Friends said the mood because things at home were so tense that viewing Griffith's public smile was hidden. Something of a mess. Before the Andy Griffith Show began in 1960, he was already having an affair with an actress. Joanna Moore took place while he was still married to Barbara. Leaders in the business, I knew the public wasn't that good. Griffin already told a lie about the picture. His fame to get women to like him, all the while pretending to be a good husband. Most well-known affair was Annetta Corsaw, who played the show, had Helen Crump Corsaw on in 1963. Andy fell hard. He asked her to marry him more than once while she was married. He turned her down every time, except for their affair didn't stop. It became known to everyone. Everyone on set knew, even tried to hide it. The team sent a fake waiter to bring them dinner. He walked into a hotel room as a joke. There was no question about what was going on. Griffin was very angry, but the damage had already done. The affair became impossible to ignore. To keep his picture safe, Griffith took extreme steps. He would cut scenes of love between Andy Taylor and Helen Crump that he didn't want the world to know about. Putting together the pieces of a scene in 1964, when Helen asked him to kiss her he stopped the outside of the office drill and told them they should only make love in their eyes. He told them, "Director, it was better for you," but the truth was that he was lying about the affair. Fans, advertisers, and the press stand behind closed doors. He was a rager. During the second season of Andy Griffith Show that he lost it and tore up it was a set where he broke props and cabinets. Knotts often stayed and punched walls. Late just to calm him down the cast stepped on eggshells, and everyone knew it. The Maybury sheriff could become a monster and not telling him what to do only got worse. Griffin later admitted that jailer Andy Taylor was who he said he was, hoped he was there but wasn't. In 1964 he told the Saturday Evening Post that he got really mad really quickly. He avoided his fear kept him from going to Hollywood parties. He said he couldn't handle things and that he was tense and uncertain, not calm and smart like his personality. The space between the man and the myth were getting bigger. CBS CEOs knew they had a problem when the picture of the show was everything it was about. A small town cares about family and honesty. The truth was told to everyone. Empire might fall apart, so the network started a cover-up. Limited access to the controlled set. People in the group were told to keep quiet. Donors threatened to take millions of dollars away. Adds that if a problem came out, everyone had to. Griffith has a lot to lose. Despite all of this continued to cheat on her with it. Wasn't Joanna Moore who was the last one. Even the worst. Moore only showed up in 4 episodes of the show before she quit. People who were there said it after the affair was no accident that years later she had only nice things to say about her. The exit was quiet and quick. With Corsaw for years, even after Griffith split up with Barbara in 1972, he never married Annetta. She said no, every time, but she kept showing up in his after that. Shows like Matlock and The Reunion show that their relationship never fully over. It wasn't just an affair, love, but it cost him. Frances Bavier never really felt seen when Andy did silly things, everyone laughed. Griffith and Don Knotts, she just sat there. In the background, angry and upset. She was angry and unhappy and once said, "I've had to sit back and watch other people get that made us laugh, and that feeling never went away." She played for all 8 Andy Warhol shows. Griffith Show. While Aunt Bee was boiled down to the straight character, the one who had the pie, while the men dropped off the funny lines that Favier had learned on the job, she had bigger plans than being a nice aunt in a southern town, but she stood every week in the background while Andy and Don center stage and won over the crowd as she spoke. She didn't hide it from the press about it. Everyone on set could feel her anger. There was a lot of stress that Frances went to treatment, and it wasn't just no longer was it anger, it was pain of a kind that went deep and stayed there. One of the main things that set Andy Griffiths, he thought it was because he loved playing practical jokes. Felt bad about how she felt about it. He liked to mess around and laugh. She wanted to focus in between takes, and as a result of dedication, everyday disagreement, Andy joked that Frances pulled out, wasn't having fun, and the more she pulled away, the more alone she felt. That far away hurt her a lot, but it also turned into her shield. The gap was most clear with Don Knotts. Frances later she said she didn't say more than 5 words to him for 8 years straight. They shared scenes while they worked together. They stood next to each other, but the camera wasn't on them. There was no hate, just quiet. From afar, she admired him as a performer. And she even thought he was cute. He wore trench coats to Fred Astaire, with the collar up, and a girl with him all the time. She saw all of that on his arm, but she didn't say much, she just worked around him, stayed quiet and stayed. Jim Neighbors saw how much pain he was in. Was one of the few people Frances believed what Andy Griffith said. There was something mean about her after a table. He wasn't alone in not letting it go. Whispered to Andy, "Andy, be nice to her because she's a good actor." Andy didn't say anything back. That a quiet moment showed everything. The Frances was by himself after group had taken sides. Except for Jim, and when he spoke up, it was more than just kindness, it was safety. That pain was still there after years. Andy Griffith and Ron Howard showed up at without being asked. The North Carolina home of Frances Bevier. They wanted to say hi and maybe get back in touch. Maybe make peace. But when she opened the door and saw them, she wouldn't let them in. It was because she didn't want to see them again. Didn't want to end it, she slammed the door. That moment said more than words could. Could she have turned her back on all of not just the show, but also the people? There were always grudges, and when she was given one last call with Andy just for several months before she died, I said I was sorry we didn't get along better, it was my mistake. I wish that was the only time she ever remorse was admitted, but anger wasn't. It was only Frances's side that Andy Griffith had enemies of his own. Don Knotts won 5 awards for his part as Barney Faye. Andy the show's star was never even not.